Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting prehistoric Jurassic episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Elder Bean. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good, as per usual. Today, we're going to be looking at one of the best dinosaur movies of all time. Now, I know you're probably saying, but Luke, Jurassic Park is the best dinosaur movie of all time. Yes, and I completely agree, and you're right. But for me, this was my introduction to dinosaurs. This movie, when it came out, like before it, I didn't know what a dinosaur was. Then I watched this and I absolutely was enthralled with dinosaurs. And then I went on to watching Jurassic Park and other sort of dinosaur classics. But for me, this movie is where it all began. So today we're going to be talking about Dinosaur from 2000. But before we get into all of that and more, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean, especially if I've got dinosaurs running around. They are wonderful, absolutely glorious creatures, but they do make one hell of a mess. So to clean up that mess and to make sure it's all nice and tidy, make sure that you follow me on Twitter at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to rate and follow the podcast. And also, finally, if you're interested, you can also follow the Howdy Beans podcast on TikTok. Just type in the Howdy Beans podcast and you'll see me there. So before we get into my thoughts and feelings and memories on this movie, I've got a very, very important question. To be honest, it's the most important question you'll ever be asked this year. And it's really, really important that you answer openly and honestly. What is your favorite dinosaur? Now, don't all shout at me at once. I'll give you time. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. I really like that one. My favorite dinosaur of all time, it fluctuates. Because when I was younger, I really liked iguanodons. Now, Aladar in this movie is an iguanodon, which is why I used to like them so much. As I've gotten older, that has changed. It's gone from iguanodon to a triceratops. But then sometimes I'm like, but I really like a stegosaurus. Stegosaurus is awesome. But I feel like my heart goes towards a triceratops. I just think they look awesome, that they're epic, that they're just like a brilliant, I was going to say brilliant design, but you know what I mean? Like they're just like a brilliant sort of dinosaur. I don't trust anybody, any adult specifically, that doesn't have a favorite dinosaur. We all have a favorite dinosaur. No matter who you are, everybody has a favorite dinosaur. And I feel that you can tell what kind of person somebody is by their favorite dinosaur, to be honest. And I can't explain why. It's just if somebody says a certain dinosaur, you just know that what sort of person that they are. I can't explain it. But yeah, I loved an iguanodon when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, it's really a triceratops is my favorite because they're just epic. They're just pure. They're like giant. Basically, they're rhinos. That's what they are. You know, like they're the ancestors to rhinos. I don't know if that's true or not. Don't cite me on that, but you know, they were just like giant rhinos with loads of armor plating, the big sort of bony sort of mane, the horns, everything brilliant. And then we have rhinos, and I'm glad that we still have a creature like that still kind of exists like now. It's just, it's absolutely wonderful. So yeah, that's my favorite dinosaur. Hopefully, you know, we share the same sort of dinosaur. Maybe you have something different. But yeah, I feel like that's the most important question. That's what I had to start this podcast off with, asking everybody what their favorite dinosaur is, because it's a very, very important question. As for sort of my memories of this movie, I have so many. So I was born in 98. This movie came out in the year 2000. So I was about 2 years old when this movie came out. So again, like I said, I hadn't watched Jurassic Park. This was my first introduction of dinosaurs. And I was just enthralled because what I love about this movie, and the reason why this movie's been so ingrained in me, is not just because it's like the first introduction to dinosaurs, but also it at the time, this movie was cutting edge. This movie was pushing the boundaries. I know a lot of people make fun of it and said, oh, even back then it wasn't good. No, lies. You've got to take it from my perspective, from a young child who's never seen anything like this before, and then grew up with this movie. It was breathtaking, and to me, it still is breathtaking. The scene where they're on the island, so you've got Aladar and you've got the other lemurs, and they're all having that sort of love coupling sort of scene, and then all of a sudden you just have the asteroid that comes in, that goes overhead, and they're all looking at, what is it? So pretty. And then it lands in the water, and then you got that explosion, and you've got the animals running. And one of the things that I love about this movie is that they took live action scenes, real life location places, and then they put CGI on top of them. But it's not like Walking with Dinosaurs. Like, I love Walking with Dinosaurs, but you can tell that's done on a budget. This is Disney money, okay? This is proper, you know, so they've not only just like plastered them on top and somewhat made it look good. No, it actually looks like they're actually there. To the point, to me, it looked real when I was younger. I genuinely believe that somehow they'd gone back in time and filmed dinosaurs. You know what I mean? And I still remember that scene where they're running through and you've got the fire and you've got the little bits of earth being flown around. And they're running, then you've got Aladar running with all his lemur family on top of him. And even before that, when you have the egg, and you've got this whole montage of the pterodactyl. I think it's like some sort of pterodactyl, but comes in, picks up the dinosaur egg, flies it around, and the egg goes from here, goes from there, and it looks real. And it's just like what Disney was able to do with this movie for the time is revolutionary. It was brilliant. It was really cutting edge, and it's a film that's always stuck into my mind. So I figured, because it's leading up to my birthday, I want to talk about proper nostalgia, true nostalgia. That's nostalgia that's personal to me, as I did last year with Help I'm a Fish and The Quest for Camelot and Cats Can't Dance, like those movies that nobody has really watched or talked about, but they're brilliant and they're pure nostalgia for me. That's the same with Dinosaur. It's like you hardly see anybody talk about this movie, and I don't know why, because it's one of the most underrated Disney animated live action sort of movies. But no one ever talks about it. It's a real shame because it's absolutely brilliant. So I have very fond memories of it. Like, so when I was like trying to figure out what I'm going to do, what I'm going to cover leading up to my birthday, it was a struggle. I had to add things in, take things out. I recorded some things and deleted them because it just didn't feel right or didn't work. And I ended up sitting around and I realized, no, Dinosaur is what I want to talk about. And then next week is another movie that I'm really nostalgic for that I want to talk about. So it's going to be brilliant. But I just this movie, I love it. So you can tell this review is going to be a very positive one, a happy one, because I'm already sort of smiling and I'm just smiling to myself like a crazy person. So to save myself from seeming so crazy, we're going to move on. So this is the synopsis of the movie. It goes as follows. So, this is the story of Aladar, an iguanodon dinosaur raised by a family of lemurs. Their world is turned upside down, however, when meteors strike, turning their green world into a desert wasteland. Teaming up with a herd of other herbivores, the trek is on to find the nesting ground, where water and vegetation is bountiful. But when carnivores behind them and nothing but desert around for miles, it doesn't look promising. That's your movie synopsis. As for the cast, so you've got D.B. Sweeney as Aladar, who I believe he was also in Brother Bear, and he played Sitka. So that's a bit of trivia for you there. Then you've got Julianne Margulies as Nira. You've got Samuel E. Wright as Kron, Elfie Woodard as Pilo, Ozzie Davis as Yar, Max Casella as Ziddy, Hayden Pantra as Suri, Peter Sagasa as Burton, and Joan Plowright as Baleen. I love Baleen. She's a giant brontosaurus. She's brilliant. So that is your cast. As for development, so funny enough, I've made this joke already, so I won't go full in detail of it, but like last year, when I was looking at things last year, especially at the end of last year, I was struggling to find any production notes on anything. And the only time I managed to find proper full production notes was when I talked about It's a Wonderful Life. But before then, it was a real struggle all the way from Halloween. And I thought, it's going to be the same. We're looking to Dinosaur. It's going to talk about the technology a bit and not a lot, and that's it. No. There are pages. There are pages of development stuff about this movie and about the animation and the casting. So I've tried my best to put it in such a way where it's digestible and it's not too overpowering. So without further ado, let's get into it. So it starts with, after founding his own namesake studio, special effects artist Phil Tippett directed Prehistoric Beast in 1984, an experimental animated short film in which a Carnotaurus is stalked by Tyrannosaurus. Tippett's skill at creating a go-motion animated creature led to the 1985 CBS animated documentary Dinosaur. A year later, Tippett was hired to work on the special effects team for RoboCop. During filming in December 1986, Tippett recalled, when John Davison and I were shooting the live-action plates where ED-209 falls down the stairs, brilliant scene by the way, there was some kind of delay. Peter Weller's shoes didn't fit, so we just had to wait for someone to get the right stunt shoes. Frustrated by the delay, Tippett suggested to Paul Van Hoven that they should produce a dinosaur picture. That way, according to Tippett, we wouldn't have to be held up by actors in robot outfits. Verhoeven was excited at the idea and suggested an approach inspired by Shane from 1953, in which you followed the lead character through a number of situations and moving from a devastated landscape into a promised land. Verhoeven, Tibbett, and Davison pitched their idea to Walt Disney Pictures, where it was placed into active development under their live-action division. Verhoeven and Tibbett then hired screenwriter Wallen Green, best known for The Wild Bunch and Sorcerer, to write a story treatment. Green explained, I wrote a pretty extensive treatment which we were going to use instead of a script. Since there was no dialogue, we were going to storyboard from the treatment. Their version was intended to be darker and violent in tone, in a style akin to a nature documentary. The film's original main protagonist was a Strina... Oh God, I'm going to really struggle with this one. Striacosaurus, I'm butchering that name, named Woot, and the main antagonist was a Tyrannosaurus Rex named Grunzy, with a small mammal named Shuri as a supporting character. After Woot defeats Grunzy in a final fight, the film would end with the it's really difficult. Cretatorius Palangide? No, yeah. Either way, extinction event, which would ultimately result in the death of the dinosaurs, which I would imagine that is the big asteroid 65 million years ago that killed all the dinosaurs, basically. I'm dyslexic, by the way, so I do apologise. Once Green had finished his treatment, Disney's finance department calculated the film's production budget would total $75 million, opposite to the studio's insistence to cost approximately $20 million. Verhoeven told Sin Fantastic he had calculated the project's primarily budget to be $45 million, but then Disney chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg felt there wasn't enough of an audience to justify the cost. In December 1990, Thomas Schumacher of the Walt Disney Feature Animation flew out to Eastern Europe after the release of The Rescuers Down Under to hire new animators. Schumacher remembered, while I travelled around Eastern Europe looking for my traditional animators, I was meeting with people who had also been talked with about the stop-motion animation to make this dinosaur film. Verhoeven and Tibbett had planned to use stop-motion animation techniques such as puppets, scale models, and miniatures. Despite a successful stop-motion test and being impressed with early computer-animated tests, Tibbett felt stop-motion was not the right approach for the film. Meanwhile, Green was prompted to write a voiceover treatment where the lemurs would narrate the story, though he remained unsure if this would work or not. Further meetings with Katzenberg reached an impasse to the point Green and Davison and Verhoeven told Tibbett that they were going to skip another scheduled meeting. By this point, producer Kathleen Kennedy, from Star Wars fame and other producing legends, approached Tibbett with a gallery for Michael Crichton's then upcoming novel Jurassic Park. Verhoeven then called Tibbett, stating, I know Spielberg has contacted you about Jurassic Park. You should do that instead. Which he did. Before Verhoeven and Tibbett had left the project, producer-director Thomas G. Smith became involved in the film, but because the director, after they had left, reflecting on this tenure, Smith said, Janie Rosenberg was still writing the script, but it was in trouble. Disney wanted a cute story of a dinosaur talking, and I didn't like the idea. I thought it should be more like Jean Audard's The Bear. I wanted to have actual lemurs in it that actually existed at the time of the dinosaurs. We actually located a guy who trains them. However, Katzenberg called Smith to help on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid in 1992, in which he was replaced by David W. Allen, who had just finished directing Puppet Master 2. Multiple months were spent filming actual lemurs to portray Surrey and creating visual development, but Allen's vision also fell into development hell. Smith stated, the thing that ultimately killed it is that Disney knew that Jurassic Park was coming along pretty well, and they knew it was being done digitally. They figured, well, maybe we should wait until we can do it digitally. By 1993, Walt Disney Imagineering was developing the Dino Land USA section for Walt Disney Animal Kingdom to be accompanied with a dinosaur attraction ride. Michael Eisner wanted to revive the dinosaur film, thus it would create a sort of a process between the studio and Imagineering. Schumacher recalled, Michael wanted to make this movie, but we didn't have a story. All we knew is that it had to have dinosaurs, and at the time it was called Countdown to Extinction, like the attraction at Animal Kingdom. As CGI animation was still in its infancy, Disney considered hiring Industrial Light and Magic to animate the film, but this provided to be too expensive. George Scribner was selected as the director. He was later teamed with Ralph Zandag. Zandag had previously animated for Sullivan Bluth Studios in Ireland and was hired as a storyboard artist on Pocahontas. Storyboard artist Floyd Norman described Scribner's vision as being more than just a struggle for survival. He wanted this dinosaur movie to have elements of fun and humour. Our director wanted to explore the fun elements of dinosaurs, such as their size, shape, and texture. George also knew that since dinosaurs come in all sizes, what wacky relationships might I come up with? What funny situations might plague a critter of such massive size? Scribner left the project to work at Walt Disney Imagineering, and Eric Layton was hired on as co-director. Layton had previously had experience as stop-motion animator for Colossal Pictures, Industrial Light and Magic, Tibbet Studios, and Henry Selick Productions. Layton had been familiar with the project beforehand, stating he had read Green's 1988 treatment. Both Zondag and Layton cited King Kong from 1933 as an inspiration. In late 1994, Walt Disney Feature Animation developed various animation tests, placing CGI characters in miniature model backdrops. The idea to use CGI backgrounds was considered, but based on proof of concept animation tests in March 1996, it was rejected. Ultimately, the filmmakers decided to take the unprecedented route of combining live action scenery with computer generated character animation. Initially, the characters were intended to be non-verbal characters, with the characters communicating in voiceover similar to Homeward Bound. Michael Eisner was screened a voiceover animation test, now known as the Noah version, and felt it was strange the characters were communicating without lips or mouth movements. Pam Marston, the film's producer, agreed. We felt we needed to have them talk. Part of it is we don't have any people in the movie, so somebody has to act. To accommodate this change, Aladar was given lips in contrast to actual iguanodons who had beaks. The new script had an iguanodon named Noah as the protagonist, wandering with his grandparents and a lemur companion named Adam, and a group of carnivores, as well as rival iguanodon named Cain, playing the antagonist. The story dealt with Noah, who had the ability to see visions of the future, foreseeing the coming of an asteroid and struggling to guide a herd of other dinosaurs to safety. That just sounds like Watership Down to me, but with dinosaurs. I'm here for it, but anyway. Further into production, Noah, Cain, and Adam were renamed Aladar, Kron, and Zinni, and certain aspects of the story were altered further into what was later seen in the final project. So, what does that development tell you? It tells me multiple things. It tells me that this was being planned and written way before Jurassic Park came even into fruition in terms of a movie. So it was being worked on before then. It had the same people that worked on movies like, RoboCop. It went from back and forth to like Kathleen Kennedy was going to be involved, and then Van Hoven was going to be involved. That would have been a really different film. And then Kathleen Kennedy went on to do Jurassic Park, and again she became one of the best producers of all time. And it just goes to show, like, there's so much went into this movie. Like, as I was reading through it, I could not believe it. How many people had their fingers in this pie, and it kind of makes sense to me as to why it went and was so good in my opinion. It was because they had so many people working on it, figuring out, waiting for the technology to get good. It kind of reminds me of Avatar, really, because James Cameron had the idea for Avatar for years, for decades, and he was like, I want to do it, but the technology is just there. So we kept working on it, refining it until the technology was there, and then we got Avatar, and then years and years later we got Avatar 2 and 3, which are basically the same movie as Avatar 1, but we won't get into it. But that really interested me. One thing I want to talk about, though, quickly, is I want to talk about the animation, because I feel like the animation is just as important as the development, especially for this movie. So, on April the 17th, 1996, the Walt Disney Computer Company announced they had acquired the visual effects studio DreamQuest Images. The studio was merged with the feature animation department's computer graphics unit in order to form the Secret Lab, which is a great name, by the way. Vision Crew Unlimited provided the live-action visual effects at the time. The Secret Lab's initial studio was reconstructed from a former Lockheed Martin. Jesus, we're getting like secret super military contract here with like aliens and stuff. But all right, from a former Lockheed building in Burbank, California. Who knows what they left lying around? maybe they did actually have a time machine. They went back in time. Maybe all this is like real. They didn't animate it. We really went back in time and filmed this. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, most of the computers were used from Silicon Graphics, and additional machines were installed to create a render farm in order to provide workstations for artists. Software engineers and technical directors, the production team eventually relocated to the Feature Animations Northside building in January 1997. And animation officially began 8 months later, although some primary work had already begun. To ensure realistic CGI animation, 3D workbooks were created using Softimage 3D software. 48 animators worked on the film using 300 computer processors to animate the film, having aspired to be a paleontologist. David Krentz supervised the character design and visual development teams. He had an orthographic view of the dinosaurs, and his character designs were drawn on paper and scanned into the Power Animator software for the modelers to rig in the computers. In the character animation department, the dinosaur characters were first visualized in the computer in skeletal form. The rough character animations were then transferred into free software programs to strengthen the visuals of the characters. The programs were Furtool, which were used for the lemurs and to create features and grass, Bodybuilder, which was used to create skin and muscles for the dinosaurs, and Mugshot, a shape blender that works with Alias Maya for facial animations and lip syncing. Headed by David Wormsley, live-action photography units shot on actual jungle, beach, and desert locations, including California, Florida, Hawaii, Australia, Jordan, Venezuela, and Somalia. In total, 2 live-action film crews shot more than 800,000 feet, about 240,000 meters of film, although one scene, which takes place inside a cave, utilized a computer-generated background in order to approximate a dinosaur's perspective. Visual effects supervisor Neil Kripila invented the DinoCam, in which a character was rigged on a cable suspended between 2 72-foot or 22-meter tall towers. The computer control camera allowed for panning and tilting on 360 degrees and moved up to 30 meters, which is about 48 kilometers per hour, across a span of 1,000 feet, 300 meters. With the live-action elements shot and the character animation reaching completion, the footage was moved into the scene finalizing department under Jim Hillen. The effects composing team blended 80 to 90% of the live-action plates against the computer-animated characters. The lighting department then adjusted the final lighting of the shots by changing the lighting conditions and replacing the skies. So that is the animation. Brilliant. You know, I just love it. I really, really do. And like the film score was composed by James Newton Howard. So he did it, and like the soundtrack album was released on May 2000. Howard would later compose the scores for the Disney animated feature films like Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which was a brilliant film. Treasure Planet, again, brilliant, underrated film. Raya the Last Dragon, which I've never seen. He also The Egg Travels was also heard in many trailers following the film's release, including Lilo and Stitch, the Wild Thornberrys movie, and Around the World in 80 Days. While the film got mixed reviews for critics, the film score received universally positive critical reception, with critics singing out The Egg Travels in particular as one of the best, which is the piece of music that you hear at the beginning of the movie when the egg is moving and the little sort of compies, you know, the little sort of tiny little dinosaurs from like Jurassic Park come in, steal it, and try to eat it and that sort of thing. But yeah, I absolutely love and adore this movie. How can you not? How can you not love Dinosaur? It's great with all the different dinosaurs in it, and all the work that went in it is absolutely brilliant. Anyway, that's all I've got to say for the production. I'm going to go off now and watch Dinosaur and have a absolutely brilliant time. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk about first impressions and the story and the music and everything about it, and then hopefully we can wrap up nicely with some trivia if I can find some. So I will see you all in a minute. And welcome back, everybody. So I've now watched Dinosaur. Hopefully, you all have too. Honestly, in my opinion, this movie is a masterpiece. Now, I will raise my hands in the air and say honestly that the rust is starting to show. There are a few things here and there that, if you really focus on them, it starts showing its age. Like the superimposing of like putting the live action with the live action shots with the CGI dinosaurs. There are certain points we look at that and go, that doesn't look great. That doesn't look great. But honestly, overall, if I feel like what this movie really needs is like a Blu-ray high definition scaling, where it just needs a newer sort of high definition sort of scaling over top with 4K even, and I feel like that will really iron out a lot of the creases and it will be a lot more smoother. Because I was watching like the original DVD from like 2000 that I had, and even though again it's a brilliant copy, it's still just an older version of the movie. So I feel like if it was upscaled, a lot of these little things would fix. But even so, I still think this movie is a masterpiece. I still think it's gorgeous. It's cutting edge then, and in a way, I'd still say it's cutting edge now. And as I said in the introduction, the reason I love this movie so much and why I have such nostalgia for it is because it was my first introduction to dinosaurs. And rewatching this movie now, I was getting the same chills. Like the beginning of this movie, it's what I love about this movie so much. The beginning of the film reminds me a bit of the beginning of Up, where if you've seen Up, Disney's Pixar's Up, that movie has really no sort of language at all. You have a little bit here and there when Ellie, and the old man meet, for the first time when they're young. You have a little bit of dialogue there, mostly done by Ellie, but apart from that, they end up telling a whole life story just with music. It's the same sort of concept here, whereas like you have a little bit at the beginning. You have Suri. She basically is like telling this story of like all great things start small, and then you're inside of an egg, and as you're inside this egg, you see the embryo, you see the little baby sort of growing and moving around, and the music's absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. Kind of reminds me of The Mummy in a way, the way the music is when in the softer moments. And then you zoom out of the egg and you see all this life, you see all the dinosaurs in their natural habitat of how they would have looked, how they would have existed in this environment. And as sort of you zoom out and you see all this and you see the different dinosaurs having fun, it's that sort of moment of like, wow, of like, this is brilliant. I mean, like, yes, there are certain bits where you look and it doesn't look so great, but like I said, I feel like that could be fixed with just an upscaler, really. Just sort of iron out a lot of the creases, especially to run on like newer TVs and that sort of things. But even so, you see these animals and they look brilliant. They're in their natural setting, and then like the Carnotaur comes and attacks them while they're nesting, the iguanodons, and then you have this moment where there's a fight. The scavengers come to steal the egg, and you see this journey this egg goes on, and the music's going, and like there's no, it's all visual and it's all music based, it's all motion, and there's no like language at all. There's no speak and dialogue. It's just you're going on this adventure with this egg, and you see as it travels and how it lands on this little remote sort of island with these lemurs, and you see Cleo and you see all the others, and I love it. I do. To me, it's just a magical movie, and this is why I have such love for it, because it's just one of them films that you watch and like you just go, yeah, this is epic. This is wonderful. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a few things here and there that I would really pick at. The fact of, there's Carnotaurs instead of T-Rex. Now, anybody who knows their dinosaurs knows that Carnotaurs were native to South America, specifically around the Argentina sort of area. But they do make up for this in the story, because I think Brutus says to Kronos, he basically says, Carnotaurs, they never travel this far south. And obviously it just goes to show the reason that they've come this far south is because, and I'll talk about this when we get to story, the Chexacub meteor, which was the meteor that destroyed and led to the extinction of the dinosaurs, landed in what is now known as lower sort of Mexico, kind of around the sort of the Amazon rainforest, around where you have the sort of the Aztecs and the Mayans live. That's why you have cenotes. Cenotes are basically giant holes and tunnels underground, and the reason that they're there and there's such a high concentration of them is because that is and was the impact crater for this asteroid that led to the end of the Cretaceous period about 65 million years ago. But obviously, it makes sense why carnivores are now further up north, because where they are, they're like in the Rockies, they're like near sort of Canada, up further north. And really, what it should be T-Rex. T-Rex lived further north of the Americans and in Canada. So really what they should be chased by is T-Rexes, not carnivores. But it makes sense if the asteroid hit in lower Mexico, then it makes sense that they would want to travel into the north, into the north lands to kind of scavenge for food, basically. So, it kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of like makes up for it. And I like it, to be honest. I like the idea of having a carnivore, because you don't see carnivores a lot. Carnivores are cool. Granted, they do look a little bit silly in terms of they've got smaller arms than a T-Rex and they're all just neck. But it just makes sense as to why they have the horns on, because I would imagine the reason that they evolved to have horns on is because a lot of them would probably bash heads with each other. Because their arms are so small, they can't grab, so they bite, and I would imagine they would probably ram each other as well with the horns. That's probably the reason as to why they have them. But yeah, so that was only a little thing, but then I noticed that bit of dialogue, and I was like, oh, okay, no, that makes sense. That's fair enough. So that was the only real sort of negative thing I have about this movie, was the fact of, that's an inaccuracy. I was like, actually, I was that one of those sort of people. But then when they fix it with the dialogue, I was like, you know what? Okay, fair enough. That's where the asteroid landed and stuff like that. But yeah, honestly, first impressions, I love this movie. I do. And was you surprised, really? It would be more surprised if that introduction, I rewatched this movie and I went, oh, it's terrible. You know what I mean? So that would be a surprise. But yeah, first impressions, I love it. And I'm glad and I hope that anybody who sort of listened to the introduction and then went off and watched the movie and came back to listen to this review, I hope you enjoyed it too, to be honest. I hope you got some enjoyment out of it. Because like I said, it's a movie that not many people talk about, and it deserves to be talked about because it was cutting edge for the time. And like I said, apart from it needing a little bit of upscaling here and there to iron out the creases, it's still a movie that, to me, still looks beautiful, still is impactful, still is emotional. Incredible characters, incredible story. Yes, it's only a short film. It's only like an hour and 21 minutes. It's not a very, very long movie. But in that short time, the spectacle of what you can see, and for a movie that came out in 2000, still looks and feels brilliant, in my opinion, and it's still a masterpiece, and is one of the best dinosaur sort of movies there is. It's just nobody talks about it, which is a real crying shame. So yeah, that's my first impressions. As for the story, as I mentioned already, you have the beginning of the movie where you have the egg, and then it goes off to sort of what happens with the egg, and you land on this planet. You see these lemurs, and you've got Izzy, you've got Cleo, you've got the grandpa, and I love the fact, and again, you could argue the fact of iguanodons. I believe they were herbivores, iguanodons, but still, it's still that idea of how is it something that a creature that big could live on an island so small. There wouldn't be enough food on the island for the other sort of animals like the birds and the lemurs and other animals that are on it, as well as this big lizard that lived on it as well. So again, you still ask that question of, what was he living off and how did he live for so long? But again, it's a kid's film. It's a Disney movie. I'm trying not to get all technical with it because it's a Disney film. We're not going to go there, but still. So he lives on this island, and I love it. And I forgot how emotional this moment is, because again, another thing that the creators were able to do with this movie is the music is so good, and the set pieces are so incredible because, like I said, it's all done live action. They actually, as I said in the introduction, they went out and they shot, live footage, using planes and helicopters and, just zooming in on plants and leaves and stuff like that, getting just live footage. And to me, the reason why I love that so much is because you're seeing these animals in their natural habitat of how they would have looked. And like I said, when I was younger, when I didn't know any better, I watched it for the first time when I was younger, and I was blown away because it felt real. It looked real because it's not like the Uncanny Valley. It's not like when you watch like Monster House or you watch like A Christmas Carol or Polar Express or any of these, or Beowulf, any of these sort of live action animated sort of movies where you watch them and they look brilliant, but like there's a very uncanny valley. The faces don't look right, and you're a bit, that doesn't, With here, you don't get that. Your brain sort of gets tricked. I can't really explain it. It's just the fact of what you're seeing is the human brain knows when it sees something that's real, when it sees real life footage. But at the same stage, when you see the dinosaurs or the pterodactyl or any sort of the animals that come into it, when you see these coming onto screen, because you're seeing like the real ocean, real waves, real rocks, real bits of sand and desert and things like that. And because they're moving as if those animals are there, so when the animals put their feet down and there's an indentation in the ground or in the sand or whatever, and it actually moves and it moves accurately, your brain's like, I know that's not a real foot, but at the same stage, it looks real. And that's what I love. I love this mix. It's done so well. And it goes from what I'm about to say now, where you have the one scene where Aladar's grown up. He's grown up with these lemurs. They're basically family to him. Like, yes, they might not be related, but like that's his found family. That is his family. That's all he knows. And it's the sort of mating season with these lemurs. And I love this scene where you have Izzy, who is basically, he's trying too hard. He's showing off. He's on the beach on his own, trying out sort of moves, sort of like lines that none of them work. He thinks he's the love monkey and all this and that. He's basically trying too hard, really trying too hard to impress. Really, if he just bees himself, he probably had more of a chance. And you got all these sort of lemurs, and the boys go off with Gramps. The girls go off with Cleo, and I love the bit where like you have this back and forth where like Cleo's like, don't be fooled by the first guy who has the best backflip, who has the cute backflip. And then it goes back to Gramps and he's like, and if the backflip doesn't work, don't worry about it. And then it goes back to Cleo and she's like, you'll remember this for the rest of your life. And it goes back to Gramps and he goes, don't worry if you make a mistake, they won't remember. And it just goes to show the different conversations between the pep talks that men give men and the pep talks women give women, which I love. And then sort of Aladar sort of gets all the sort of male lemurs on top of him. And he takes them out and he parades them, and all the women are sort of already waiting. He's like, "Hey, look, girls, look at like what I've just brought in. Sort of the wagon's just brought in, like he's showing off all the men. And you got all the men, hey ladies, blah 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 blah. And you got Izzy trying his best, trying too hard, trying to show off and all that. And then you have this like beautiful music where it's just this coupling where they're swinging through the vines. It's lovely. My heart breaks for Izzy because he ends up getting stuck and getting tangled on the vines because again he's trying too hard, so his foot's getting tangled. So they're all swinging, having in love. He can't get free, and by the time he gets free, he looks around, and all the sort of pairs are taken. Really, all the females have gone. Everybody's paired up, and he's on his own. And my heart breaks for him, but it's the scene that comes next. You have this such lovely scene of music and love and passion and coupling, and it's if any other movie, this would be the end. Any other like really big adventure, fantasy, epic sort of sci-fi, any sort of movie, this would be the ending where like you've gone through your adventure, you've gone through the end. And then you have happy and people couple up and it's lovely and they're watching the sunset and it's gorgeous, roll to credits. No, this movie begins at the end. The movie begins at the end of the Cretaceous period, the end of the dinosaur, really. And they're looking and all of a sudden, you have they think they're shooting stars going over and they're looking, well, what is that? And I remember seeing this when I was younger and it blew my mind, and seeing it again at 27. I'm just getting chills. And I won't lie, I was getting emotional. I was tearing up at this point because I knew what was coming. And it's so well done. And it's so sad. And again, I love animals, and seeing animals getting hurt and killed, even though it's not real. I know it's not, but because it's in a live action setting, like it's actual, like it's a real place, the island, like the footage you're seeing is real. It's just the dinosaurs are the part that are not real. It just makes it more impactful to me anyway. So as they're looking up, you see all these bits of like comets, like rock is coming through the atmosphere, burn up in the atmosphere, and they're looking, what is that? What is it? It's like, I don't know. And they're looking up, and all of a sudden, this huge flash, and the music just turns, and as this big rock just comes out of nowhere, and it just comes straight down and lands because how big it is, obviously it looks like it's close by. It's actually miles and miles away, but it lands sort of in the ocean, which is where Chexel I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong, but Chexel the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs, did land. It landed sort of in the ocean, but also sort of near land as well. And they see it come in, and I love this scene because as soon as it hits, music stops, it goes silent. You see the flash and the explosion first, which is scientifically accurate because that's true. Because if a nuclear bomb was to go off or an asteroid was to hit, you would see it first before you heard it. You would see the explosion, you'd see the flash, depending on how close you are to it, and then you would hear it because light is faster than sound. So you'd get the flash, you'd get the sort of bright light, sort of like you see the fireball, the mushroom cloud, whatever you want to call it, and then you'd be hit by the sound and then the shockwave. And I love that because that's what they do in this scene. It's bang, flash, mushroom cloud, then shockwave, sound, and then the music kicks back in. And it's that realization, like, we've got to get out of here. And as they're, again, this is where I get emotional, as they're running, they're trying to find, so I think it's Suri. She's up in the tree trying to get her out of the tree. And she's like, run, Aladar, run. And he's running. And they zoom into Aladar's eye. It's that brightness. You can see the explosion getting closer. And they're running through this island. And it kind of reminds me, like, I don't like the movie Jurassic Park, Jurassic World Dominion. I think it's the second one. I'm not a big fan of that movie. I went to cinema to watch it. Midnight showing, wasn't a big fan. I kind of felt disappointed by the end of it. But one of the parts of that film that I really love, but also it kills me, is the part with the Brontosaurus. That they're all getting on the ship, they're leaving, the volcano's exploded, and as they're going, and I've noticed as well, if you watch this film on normal TV, they cut this scene out or they shorten it. But when I was in the cinema and I saw the longer version of it, it broke my heart. It makes me cry, it makes my mom cry. You got the Brontosaurus, and they're like, "Oh, is everybody here? Is everybody here?" They're looking, they've got animals, everybody's gotten off the island, boats going away, and all here is like that. I see more emotional. I just sound like a dead horse, and you look out and the camera turns around, you see this Brontosaurus. He's just shouting like, "Come back!" You can hear it, even though it's no words. You know what that Brontosaurus is saying. You know he's saying, or she, or whatever is saying, "Come back!" Help me. And then all of a sudden it just gets enveloped by the ash cloud, and oh god, I remember crying in the cinema, and I cry watching it now. And that, to me, that's probably not the best. Well, when I say best, I don't mean the best as it's great, but you know what I mean. Like, it's the only scene where I'm like, okay, this is the part of the movie where I'm like, okay, this is good, but the rest of it is a bit. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that movie. But it reminds me of that, is because as they're running through, you can see other lemurs are getting trapped, falling down. You've got bits of debris as the explosion's getting closer. Aladar running, he's got the family on his back. He gets to the end of the island. It's still coming, like he can't escape it, and the only chance he can do is to jump into the ocean below. He turns around, and it zooms into his eye again, and you can see his explosion getting closer. So all he can do, he just jumps in the ocean, jumps in, and he goes down. Bubbles everywhere. Obviously the sort of the shockwave and like the ash cloud and all the debris just goes straight over them, over the ocean. He pops his head up. He's like, Cleo, Suri, Gramps, where are you? Is he? And they're on a raft, and then they make it cuts, and they make their way to land. And when they get to land, they look around. Everything's just destroyed. Everything's gone. Everything's on fire. There's nothing left. It's just a wasteland. And again, this bit gets me as well. They turn around and they look at their island, their paradise, their home is what they've always known. They've known nothing else other than this island, and it's on fire and it's destroyed. It's gone. And the lemurs are going like that. And Aladar doing his big roar, and they're trying to call out, and they're listening, and they can't hear nothing back because no one's going to call back. And I was like, oh my god! I got sad when I was young. I get sad now watching. I'm like, oh god. And from there, they go on this journey through sort of the wastelands, really, of what would be America. And it's all desert. There's nothing left. It looks like Arizona. No offense to Arizona, but it looks like the Nevada desert. It looks destroyed. It doesn't look like habitable. because they're lucky they managed to jump in the ocean. And I didn't think when they jumped in the ocean, that's one last place I'd want to be. But then I thought, well, no, because the explosion landed in the ocean. So any of the big animals like Megalodon, which actually I don't think, if I remember correctly, I don't think Megalodon was around during the Cretaceous period. I think he was a lot further behind. But even so, there's big things in that ocean, either way, that could kill you. And but then I thought to myself, well, no, if the asteroid was to hit in the ocean area, the shock wave would have killed most things in the area, and would have done a shockwave throughout the ocean, which a lot of the bigger animals would have either swam away or would have swam deep, and they probably wouldn't come up for a while. So they probably would have been quite safe in the ocean. But that's neither here nor there. That's just me being sort of Pacific. Anyway, but yeah, they look around, and obviously they were lucky to jump in the ocean. All the other animals weren't. All the other dinosaurs, they had nowhere to go. So again, it leads to the mass sort of extinction of a lot of animals, and they are lucky enough to meet all the sort of baleen and all these other, like the Brontosaurus and the Triceratops, and all these other dinosaurs, and they find a herd of other iguanodons. And I love it. I do, but it begins this mass exodus of trying to find the nesting grounds, which is where Aladar meets Nera. Because again, he's lived on this island, he's never known any other sort of iguanodon before. He's only really known himself and obviously the lemurs. And even I think Suri actually says, she goes, "Oh, look at all them Aladars," when they see this huge herd. So again, he meets his love interest, but he also meets Narine's brother, who's Kronos, and his lackey Brutus, and you meet Baleen, who is the giant Brontosaurus. You meet Emma, who is the Tyrannosaurus, not Tyrannosaurus, no, Triceratops. Yeah, so many sauruses. It doesn't help being dyslexic, really, when you have a movie like this. Generally, I try to look in how to pronounce a lot of the dinosaur names. Again, the standard ones are easy. Then you have some that is whoever paleontologist decided to name these creatures wasn't being very nice to dyslexic that day when they decided what to name them. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, I love the story, how it goes on, and you see more of who Aladar is. You see how kind he is, how he doesn't want to go out the front with the young blood, with the other iguanodons and Kronos, and leave all the weak ones behind. So instead, he stays behind with Baleen and Emma, and he gets to know them because they're older, they're slower. So as Kronos says, it's like, oh, that's fine. Let them fall behind. Let's let the weak predict our speed, and he's like, well, no, we're just going to move on, and if they fall behind, fine, it's going to slow all down the predators, so we can kind of get to safety, which is a bad way of thinking of it, but he's not a very good leader, to tell you the truth. But you learn more about Aladar, and you realize he's just a caring sort of, I was going to say person, but he's not a person, but caring dinosaur, caring character is probably an easy way to say it then, to be honest. And even when they get to a bit when they're looking for water and they find water, and Baleen accidentally presses down, and because obviously the water would have seeped into the soil, so she presses down and managed to bring the water up, and straight away they're drinking, because they need it the most. All of a sudden, Kronos comes along. He's trying to boot people out the way, and then all the other iguanodons push everybody out of the way, and it kind of sort of ruins it. It's that fact of it's all me. It's very egotistical. It's like, oh, I'm the strongest, so I should drink, and you all wait, and I'm going to do this, and it's all fighting. It's all just look, there's enough for everybody. Slow down, calm down. But again, in this situation, when it comes to survival, it's very sort of me, I. Not how can we help save the many. It's how can I save myself? And then if everybody else survives, well, that's good. That's that's a bonus, but it's not a necessity to me. You know what I mean? Which is sad, but again, that's just how things are when it comes to survival sort of situations. Obviously, I'm not going to sort of dictate the whole movie because I'm not the Doom generation. I'm not very good at that. But I just wanted to sort of highlight sort of the key moments in it. And then when you get to sort of the end of the movie and you see they're in a cave and they find Brutus and he's been hurt, he's been attacked by the Carnotaurs, and he sort of talks to Pleo, not Cleo. But he says, well, it's why does he do what he does, talking about Aladar? And he goes, but just because. It's the right thing to do. it's kind of that same thing of like, well, in other words, it's basically saying like, why is he so naive? Why is he wanting to help people, not help himself? And it's the answer of like, just because that's just not who he is. He doesn't help himself. He's here to help others. And again, he's been raised right. He's not lived on the mainland with all the other Eladars. He's had kind of like a sort of isolated sort of existence. So the lemurs, who probably have a different way of living, are brought up Aladar to have a different way of thinking. So it's not me, I. It's the fact of come together as a community, help each other, be there for each other, support each other. Because again, lemurs and other sort of monkeys and apes, primates are very communal based. They are very much sort of for the community, for the herd, for the pack. I'm not really sure what you call a pack of monkeys. I think it is a pack of monkeys. I'm not sure, but you know what I mean. Like it's a very sort of communal sort of thing. So it makes sense as to why he cares more about looking after everybody else instead of just putting himself first. And it comes back to the same part at the end of the movie where like Aladar and his lot have managed to find the nesting grounds early, but they realise when they get there that the entrance that everybody takes normally has basically caved in, crumbled in. Like there's no way of getting in. It's like a sheer drop on both sides. So Aladar goes to sort of tell Kronos, being look, you can't climb it. It's a sheer drop. None of you will make it. Obviously the Carnotaurs followed Aladar, so now they're cornered. And I love this bit. It kind of reminds me of Ants, or not even Ants, just like the movie Bug's Life, that sort of thing, where it's like, one ant against a grasshopper can't do nothing, but many ants against all the grasshoppers. There's more of us. We're more numbers, means more power, and can take on Hopper. And it's the same thing here. It's this fact of Aladar just doesn't want to stand down. And it's another emotional moment for me, because that moment where they all look at him like he's crazy, and just the Carnotaur's running at him headlong back to take him out, and he just stops dead, looks at him, and shouts, "Arr!" Again, I can't do it, but does he shout? And the Carnotaur kind of stops and kind of looks, because obviously he's a Carnotaur, he's a predator. He's more than likely in his life never had anybody ever stand up to him before. It's that fact of like, he has that look of like, what's going on? I'm not sure what to do. But then all the other sort of iguanodons get up, and they again start shouting and at the Carnotaur, and the Carnotaur again, even though they've got no way of properly fighting the Carnotaur because they don't have the teeth, they don't have it's still that thing of like, it's still that group mentality of that more of us, the many against the few being the Carnotaur, can take on anybody. So they've managed to get away, and obviously the Carnotaur's like, well, I'm not going to bother with that group because I can't, there's too many of them, I can't take them. They're obviously a bigger threat to me than what they would be on their own. Then he sees Kronos climbing up. He's still trying to climb up the hill, and Aladar again goes to help. Nera, his sister, goes to help. They can't really do anything. And obviously Kronos ends up sort of getting killed, but he'll kill, somewhat sacrifice himself. But it's one of those, you're watching, it's like, it's so powerful, so emotional with the music and with the scenery. And obviously they make their way to the nesting grounds, and sort of, it's a lovely sort of ending, and sort of the movie ends from there. But even though obviously I didn't want to go beat for beat, I just almost went beat for beat for the whole movie. Luckily it's not a very, very long film. But the music is what makes this movie so powerful. It's the music what makes everything so sort of emotional. That even though these are animals, they're not humans, because they are so well written, and because the voice acting is incredible, and because the music, everything on top of it. When you watch this movie, you can't help not just get so lost. And as I said, like the main music for this with the egg has been used in other things as well. And like I said as well, when I watch this movie, there are other sort of movies, like there are other sort of sounds in this movie that sound like other films. The film sounds like Atlantis, and there's other ones that sound like The Mummy, and other sort of these grand sort of adventure sort of films. So it's for me, it's right in that pocket of nostalgia of when movies and animated films were just brilliant, where like it wasn't just big flashy colors, like it was to tell a story, it was to be impactful, it was to really hit home, an adventure piece, a story, something that's like something that's just really engaging and sort of hard hitting and epic. And that's what this movie is, with the visual designs and superimposing, dinosaurs onto live action sort of footage. And like I said, at some parts it doesn't hold up, it doesn't completely work. In other parts it does. But like the parts it does, it works some of the most. So like when they're in the cave. It works really, really well there. And you have the rain coming down on the outside, and you're like, that's real rain. It's a real cave. And then you have the dinosaur side. Maybe because it's not as bright, maybe because it's a bit darker because it's nighttime inside of a cave. That's why it looks better. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but potentially. But like I said, the Carnotaur looks brilliant. The iguanodons look brilliant. All the dinosaurs look brilliant. Like even if you subtract the idea of like, yeah, the iguanodons have been given lips so that they can talk, but iguanodons don't have lips. They have like a beak sort of thing. But even so, you subtract that, it still works. They still look good. And even for a movie from 2000, all this movie really needs is just like a new lick of paint in terms of just, a bit crisper, a bit sharper. Blu-ray. I feel like if I got the Blu-ray of this and watched it in more high definition, where a lot of the crease has been smoothed out, I feel like visually it would look better. And those moments that look a little bit off, those wrinkles and creases would be better. And that again, that's my honest opinion. But does it need it though? Entirely no. It's me mostly just being nitpicky, most being like, I can see where it's on. I'm watching it on a newer TV. I'm watching an older copy of the film. If I had a newer copy of the movie on, that had been rezzed or had a little bit better sort of upscaling, maybe it would play better on a newer TV. But if I got the movie and I decided to sort of watch it on like a newer TV with a newer copy, would it look better? Would it play better? You know what I mean? So it's that sort of thing. But like I said, it's tiny little nitpicks really at the end of the day. It's just me being picky. It's nothing really major. And for that, it's mostly me going, no, it doesn't need it, but I would like it. But again, it doesn't really matter. It's just me being picky. But yeah, overall thoughts. Dinosaur, it's still epic, it's still magical, it's still a masterpiece, it's a wonderful story, and it's one of those films where like I just feel like more people should talk about it. It deserves it, to be honest. And I feel like it'd be great for kids because like every child has their favorite dinosaur. You talk to any child, they'll have their favorite dinosaur. And I know a lot of people love Jurassic Park because Jurassic Park is wonderful. And actually, funny enough, I was talking to a friend about Jurassic Park yesterday. A friend of mine, he likes to collect old VHS tapes, and he has like CRT, he has like cassette players and like video, still has like VCR players and stuff like that. And we was talking about Jurassic Park, and he was saying how that when he watches Jurassic Park on video on an old CRT sort of TV, he says it looks better on a tape and on that than it does on a DVD. And we had this long conversation, and basically the reason for it is the fact of, and I agree with him. The reason why is because that movie was shot for that sort of media sort of equipment. The movie was shot to be seen on those sort of TVs, to be formatted into video. They wasn't made to go onto DVD. That sort of, like the later movies were, the early movies were. Even Jurassic Park still looks incredible. I've watched that movie in 4K, and even though it still looks incredible, I just feel like that because it's so high quality, you can. It's like if you watched an old fashioned sort of version of not Thunderbolts, Thunderbirds. If you watch it on an old TV, you can't see the strings because again the way the format is and the way the TV is, you can't see the strings. Whereas if you watched it on a newer DVD that's been upscaled on a newer TV, newer quality, you can see the strings. It's the same thing, in my opinion, with Jurassic Park, is the fact of even though the T-Rex and all the other dinosaurs still look incredible, they don't look as incredible as I remember them when I first saw them on videotape when I was younger. And it's that same thing here with this movie. It's that fact of, if you watched it back then, it looks brilliant and excellent. But you watch it now in the little things. But the point that I was trying to make, and the reason I brought up Jurassic Park, is the fact of everybody, I think most people's favorite dinosaur movie is Jurassic Park, and for good reason, because it's a masterpiece. It's a brilliant film. but I feel like this should be up there with those sort of dinosaur movies as well, because of what it does. Because they were on location, because of the work that went into it, and how it's like I say, it still holds up today, even with my nitpicking and things like that. It's still one of them movies that when you watch it, you go, "Yeah, this is epic. This is a masterpiece." And if you're a dinosaur fan, like most people are, you will get enjoyment of it. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I just think it's brilliant. And also, I found out recently that I think this year in Disney California Adventure or Disneyland Florida, one of them, that the dinosaur ride, from this film, is actually closing down. I think he's going to be part of the new Avatar sort of world at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Sadly, I'll probably never get to go there. But if you live in America and you listen to this and you live near Florida, get yourself down to Disneyland, Florida, get yourself to Animal Kingdom, and get yourself on the dinosaur ride, because it won't be around for much longer. And there's a giant Aladar sort of statue out the front you get a picture with, which sadly I'll never get a picture with, but is brilliant. Like, I don't know what happened to that dinosaur, but I ain't got a lot of money, but I'll put a bet in. If they auction it off, I'll have it in my garden. You know what I mean? But yeah, I absolutely love and adore this film, and I've had a brilliant time, and I hope you all have too, to be honest. But before we get to the end, and before we wrap things up nicely, I just want to do a bit of trivia, because I do love my trivia. So, the backgrounds in the movie are actually superimposed photos of exotic tropical locations, such as the Canamia National Park in Venezuela, while some others are from the Tititia and from Tahiti, not Tahiti, Tahiti and Hawaii. The plot hole pointed out by some as to why the herd went to have their babies in the nesting grounds but didn't remain there, hence the desert exodus, was explained in the essential guide of this movie. The land in the nesting grounds become too cold and infertile in the winter, driving the herd to leave it and return when they begin to breed. Which would be true, to be honest. Like, again, thing with the nesting ground, it's a bit odd, because I know it's meant to be like an oasis. Like, it's kind of like, when you see the nesting ground, it is basically inside a crater, really. Because it's surrounded by these huge, like, mountain rock sort of walls, so it's kind of protected. But it did make me wonder as to why everything else around it was destroyed, but it wasn't. But again, I digress. It doesn't really matter. But it's one of them things. In order to separate this from the similar movie The Land Before Time from 1988, this movie was intended not to have any dialogue at all, but Michael Eisner, head of Disney at the time, insisted they include it. Initially, directors Eric Leighton and Ralph Zondag were to use the popular Tyrannosaurus Rex as the movie's antagonist predator, but at around the time of production, The Lost World Jurassic Park from 1997 was released, which depicted a somewhat softer, motherly side to the classic dinosaur. Thus, a Carnotaurus was used instead. However, they changed the Carnotaurus size to be even larger than the Tyrannosaurus Rex, because actually the Carnotaur is actually smaller than the T-Rex, close to 17 to 18 meters long, when real Carnotaurus were only 8 to 9 meters in length, about the same size or even smaller than the film's hero Aladar. So he was about as big as a sort of iguanodon. Like, he wasn't big. Like I said, he's more neck than anything. But you can imagine, like, a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex is terrifying, but a small Tyrannosaurus Rex is probably more terrifying in a way, because he can get where the T-Rex can't get, you sort of thing. And like I said, he's mostly, if you look at them, they're mostly all neck, and it's probably why, because they're so small, that's why they had horns as well. The best way to defend themselves, maybe from like bigger Tyrannosaurus sort of carnivorous predators, maybe fight each other. But yes, that answers that. The original planned opening shot showing the meteor moving through space was cut when an identical opening shot was used in Armageddon in 1998. One creature that was designed but cut from the final film was a Mosasaurus, a large sea-dwelling reptile that would have been used in a scene where the herd goes to a river to drink and encounters the Mosasaurus. In some video game versions of this movie, however, the Mosasaurus makes an appearance. And one final one. one original concept for the dialogue in this movie would have seen the characters not moving their lips and beaks to talk, but rather as voiceovers similar to Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, or Spirit Stolen of the Kamahara, if you've watched that movie. But yeah, that's all I got for trivia. Good sort of another bit trivia for you. The Mosasaurus is actually the what is believed to live in Loch Ness. So what they believe Nessie to be, the Loch Ness, they believe it to be a Mosasaurus. But I like to believe that Nessie does exist. But at the same stage, there is a lot of facts saying, like, the loch is not deep enough to sort of allow a creature that big to survive here and there. But people have claimed to have seen a monster in it. Have they? Haven't they? I don't know. I like to think that Nessie exists, but who knows? Anyway, that is all she had for trivia, and that is all she had really for the review for Dinosaur. I didn't plan it to be this long. I've just realised, I've just checked the time. I'm talking for about an hour and 4 minutes in total, so I do apologise, but thank you for sticking around. Like I said, I do love this movie. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and as you know, if you've been listening to this sort of show long enough, whenever I get nostalgic and sort of really excited about a movie, I tend to waffle on. So again, I do apologise, but that's why you keep coming for, isn't it? Me just to waffle on and get excited about movies that I love. So yeah, but either way, hello everyone. Hi, am I coming in clear? This is Luke from the future. So basically, I've got a thing to report. When I was reviewing and going through this episode, I'd basically already finished it. And while I was going through the editing process, I realised that I missed out something really, really big and really important. And what that is that I did my first viewer question of the year for the podcast, and I forgot to sort of add it in. So here I am from the future, adding it in now. So I did a question over on Twitter when I basically asked everybody, I have an important question to ask everyone. What is your favorite dinosaur and why? Let me know. And I actually got a lot of replies back. And as I sort of was going riffing through talking about dinosaur and talking about my nostalgia of it, it completely skipped my mind. So I deeply apologize. But because I had so many replies back from so many people, I didn't want to leave it out because it was just too good to leave out, because some people had some brilliant dinosaurs, some of them that I've never heard of before or wouldn't even imagined. So I just wanted to add it in here. So the first one we got was from Horrifying Heist podcast. They went a T-Rex. To be honest, I get it. A T-Rex, it's like the apex. You know what I mean? It's like loving a megalodon. It's like you can't get any better. It's like the apex predator. The T-Rex is terrifying. And not just that, scientists, or should I say paleontologists, have I don't know if is discovered the right word, or is maybe the right word, sort of changed their mind on what they think a T-Rex sounds like. So if you go onto YouTube and type in, I think it's New Evidence T-Rex sound. Obviously, we all know the sound from Jurassic Park. It's very sort of like, not that, but that was terrible. But you know what I mean? We all know what a T-Rex sounds like because of Jurassic Park. Well, actually, what they think a T-Rex sounds like now is a lot more terrifying. I can't even sort of reproduce it with my own voice. It is more of like a guttural sort of humming, sort of kind of the sound that like a growl, sort of a sound like a cat makes when it purrs, but a lot more terrifying, a lot more like that. Which to me, tell you the truth, if I'm deep in the forests or in the jungles in like 65 million years ago in North America, and I hear that noise while I'm sort of walking through, I'm telling you now, there'll be nothing left inside me. I would have, it would have left my body, I would have been gone. The sound is terrifying. So, you put that new sound or new theory of what it sounds like of a T-Rex, and then you look at a T-Rex, you're like, yeah, no, they've just gone up a level of more terrifying. So Horrifying Heist, definitely great choice for a T-Rex. Then David Garrett goes, I'm basic. The Velociraptor is my favorite. And again, I do agree, but I did reply to him because I don't think that's a basic answer at all, because again, Velociraptors are awesome, but I love the new idea, new concept of what scientists have now agreeing on what a Velociraptor actually looked like. Because originally, back during the 90s and that, when Jurassic Park came out and this movie came out, the sort of prevailing theory of what a Velociraptor looked like was just like a giant sort of miniature lizard, really like a bird, but just scale it. What the theory is now is that they had fur, that they had like furry tails and like kind of like a chicken. It was like not like a chicken, like a cockerel does. No, it has a cockerel has that like loads of excess skin underneath, something like that, or they have like the excess sort of peacock sort of hair on top of their head. In my opinion, if you look at what they now think a velociraptor looks like compared to what we did believe a velociraptor looked like, I think the more chickeny, furry, like bird-like creature is more terrifying. Because let's be honest, ostriches are terrifying. You look at any sort of big bird, a condor. Condor is one of the largest birds in the world, right? If a man was standing next to a condor, even a fully grown man, wingspan would be wider. They're taller when they sit down. It's terrifying. So a giant predator with teeth running at you, bird, no, you forget about it. It's terrifying, So I don't think it's basic at all, especially with the new evidence we have now of what we think a velociraptor would have looked like. It's even more terrifying than a normal scaly lizard, in my opinion, anyway. And then you had Beyond 6 Seconds, a neurodivergent podcast. They said a stegosaurus, and again, I agree. I love a stegosaurus. I do. I love. As I said, I change between a stegosaurus and a triceratops all the time, because I can never make my mind up because they're both epic. They're both incredible. So I completely get with a stegosaurus. You've got the big scales on the back. You've got, the horned tail. They're just brilliant, like, creatures. And I love them. I do. I think they're brilliant. This one I couldn't pronounce. I'm going to give it a go. It's an Ivorus. Basically, it looks it's kind of funny. The Barking Hour podcast basically puts the name of what it is and then goes, because look at him, he's such a dork, and then they put a picture, and it is a very dorky looking sort of bird, sort of velociraptor sort of creature, but also kind of reminds me of a bit like a dodo bird, to be honest, like, the sort of grandfather of a dodo bird. But it's a very dorky looking creature, but still looks vicious. It's got those giant claws on its hands and giant claws on its feet. So I'm sure that if it went up and tried to slice me, it'd cleave me in two. So dorky, yes, looking, but dangerous, most definitely. I just wish I could pronounce it. And then you've got What an Oddcast podcast. They went, just in general, ? Baryonyx, actual raptor, hand clawed, not just long snouted, or Gorgonopsian. He put a gift, for example, I think from Primeval. And I remember sort of writing a reply saying that looks like a werewolf mixed with a dinosaur. And I think he actually replied saying, was a strange pseudo reptile that had again, these long words are not easy for dyslexic. Mammalian features. You're not wrong, lol. Got its name for the exact reason, because it was a reptile sort of dinosaur that had mammal features, that looked like a dog, that had a dog sort of head, which just looks terrifying, to be honest. But again, brilliant. Then we had the Family Plot podcast. They went the Helicorn, aka the buzzsaw shark. So this was basically a shark that, for some unknown reason, evolution decided instead of having a normal jaw, that their bottom jaw would just be like a saw, basically. It would be sort of rounded with teeth going all the way around. So again, it gets its name, looks like a buzzsaw, right? Why it was like that, I don't know. How it was used, we can only speculate, but it must have been a nightmare for this animal to catch anything, because again, I would imagine it would have had to scoop it up, unless the teeth were really sharp, scoop it up, and then how would it chew? Or did it, like, because of how sharp the teeth were, maybe it scooped it up and then kind of just like ripped it to shreds with its teeth, again, like buzzsawed into it, like it didn't, like maybe it went for animals that were already dead, so it just like cut through and then like ate the rest, maybe. I don't really know. But still, for some reason, evolution decided that is why, they should have one, but you can see why they didn't last very long. But yeah, absolutely brilliant choice. Then the Cold Case Kansas podcast, they went T-Rex again, and they put a shot from Meet the Robinsons with little T-Rex going, I've got short arms and a big head and I can't reach him. I don't think this plan was very much thought out well. Master, that one. And we ended up just talking about how much we love Meet the Robinsons, but great choice, T-Rex. Then the SP Film viewers put, and again, I can't pronounce this one again, but I'm going to try, Therizonosaurus, a badass dino bird with massive scythe claws. Basically, again, it looks like a giant 6-foot turkey. It does. Like when I Googled it, it looks like a giant turkey. It's got, basically, imagine a turkey, but huge. As big as like a sort of velociraptor, right? Furry, has feathers, big arms with claws on the front, right? With like a beak on their face, right? It's like a giant turkey, just hell beast. Like people make fun of turkeys and chickens, but we forget, like, they were dinosaurs. Like there's many times when I went to London the once, and I saw pigeons. And when I say pigeons were savages and they didn't care for anybody else, they were savages. Pigeons are savages. People don't think of it, man, but they are. And like other birds as well. I went down to not Brighton. Where was it now? Llandudno or Llandudno, and I went there, and the seagulls were savage. They would take the hat off your head. They would take the chips out your hand. They will swarm you. And it's kind of funny. I was sitting there with a friend of mine, and we're eating chips, and I've got the chips huddled to my chest, and I'm just looking around, and it's like mine, all around me, and they're just savages. And like you look at me, like, yeah, I can imagine that being a dinosaur. I can see it. I can see the evolution process. I get it. Because imagine that, but bigger swarmed you. You ain't lasting. This is why humans couldn't have survived if dinosaurs were still around, because there was no way that mammals could survive with these creatures on the earth, because they were just incredible. Anyway, another great choice. And then Marie from the We Need a Rose podcast and the Two Girls, One Reusable Cup podcast, she puts Triceratops. Me too. I completely agree with you, Marie. Triceratops is the bee's knees. They are just incredible. They're just all round. Everything that you want from a dinosaur, they have it. They've got the horns. They've got the look. They've got the sort of giant. So I'm sure like mane. It's like horns, sort of mane sort of thing. They've got the armor plating. They're just brilliant, like creatures. They just look fantastic. I love them. And then the Jacked Up review show, they basically put the one that eats people, which I would imagine be T-Rex or any sort of other predators type of dinosaur. But that's it for everybody. Like I said, I got a lot of replies and a lot of interactions, and it kind of felt bad not to sort of add them in. So I just wanted to add them in quickly to the end. So thank you for indulging me. But by all means, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you liked it and all that. If you did, make sure you follow the podcast on Spotify, follow on YouTube, so you can stick around. You get notifications when new episodes are released, because I've got a lot of plans coming up for this month. Got a lot of plans for February and like Valentine's Day and things like that. And I've got loads of plans coming for the rest of the year. So if you liked what you heard here and you want to see more, make sure that you're following the podcast so you can see more. And make sure you look back in my back catalogue for all the other episodes that I've done. But until then, thank you very much for indulging me in my passion, being able to talk about one of my favourite topics, which is dinosaurs. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon. Bye-bye.